Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It is a basketball week around here. Yes, we're going to talk some baseball and the Trey Mancini situation with the Orioles, as well as the Ravens preparing for free agency and the crazy CBA. It's always golf season for this guy down at Compass Point Golf in Pasadena, but this is his favorite time of the year as well. And I know you've been making some pilgrimages, Robert Canady, and I got my Coppin State banner behind us. I had my UMBC hat on Saturday as they were getting it going down there. It's basketball everywhere, and I know the Terps are in the middle of all of this, but for a guy like you that chases Towson and UMBC and Loyola and Morgan Coppin, all these teams around, this is a week of hope for all of these little engines that can and could, and I know sometimes it's a little disappointing as it was for Towson on Sunday night.
Yeah, exactly right. The Big Ten was wrapping up the regular season this past weekend, but for all the other conferences and teams you mentioned, they were beginning their conference tournaments, or in some cases for some teams ending their season. And in particular, I saw the UMBC victory on Saturday in the first round, their quarterfinals, so that's good. They'll move on and play Vermont later this week in the semifinals, but spend a full day Sunday at the CAA tournament quarterfinals where Towson played, and it was a new venue this year, which was really cool, the Sports and Entertainment Center down in D.C. So,
well, now that's where the Mystics play, right? And I haven't been in that particular gym. I even said last week, and I think I said it to you, we got together, the Rutgers game looked like fun up in New Jersey, and I love me. I haven't been to the Palestra yet, and I keep talking about that. And even the new buildings in the area, where Towson has CQ now, much different than the Towson Center was. UMBC, they're in their event center, much different than the RAC was. Maryland in the Xfinity Center, much different than Cole was. That you sort of long for these sort of old school experiences. Apparently where that CAA tournament was, that was that sort of gym, right?
Yeah, it was. It was actually probably a perfect size for that tournament. In the past, it's been held at the Baltimore Arena, downtown Royal Farms Arena, where it's 12,000 seats and they get 3,000 to show up, and it just looks like, an empty canyon. Richmond Coliseum did pretty well, in the years it was down there, but I believe the official capacity of the arena in D.C. is about 4,200, and I didn't see any official numbers from Sunday, but I bet they had every bit of 3,000 to 3,500 there. It was pretty full, and especially with it being within an easy drive of a lot of the schools. Obviously Delaware just a couple hours up the road, William and Mary not far away. Elon had a good contingent, Charleston. Well,
you're going to the capital of the free world. I mean, as much as we've bagged on D.C. much of our lifetime, now that you're having something in Washington, D.C., you might as well say you're having it in New York, right? Or Los Angeles, or anywhere that's a big place. People saying we're going to do it in D.C. and giving a venue helps every hotel. It helps every restaurant. People know how to get in there via train, via car, via airplane. People like going to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, exactly. It's over a weekend you combine with some sightseeing between games, and it was a relatively easy place to get into. Now, there wasn't tons of parking right there at the arena, but they did a great job running, the shuttles, both the little 12-passenger and the big 40-passenger buses from parking lots that was maybe a block or two, a couple blocks away. And, people talk about D.C. and worry about the crime and all that, but it was, it was in Southeast, and you never felt threatened or anything at all. It was, and I was down there until midnight on Sunday night. So it was a neat environment, a great crowd, and, unfortunately for Towson, the results didn't turn out for them as they'd hoped. They had the great regular season, winning 13 of their last 16. And as often has happened with them, they just have struggled to get past that first round in the quarterfinals. Some people say their style of play is not really cut out for tournament style, but, I think it's more than that. It's just, the luck of the draw, and they kind of struggled with like Maryland has done this year. They've had a good half and they had a bad half, and unfortunately Towson's bad half was the first, and it put them down by about 16 early in the second half, and they rallied to get within 4. But as often happens when you have to make a big rally like that, you can never quite get over the edge to do it. And they had just beaten Northeastern the week before, so Bill Coe and the coach there, he had a week to prepare for Towson and make some changes, and so once again they'll probably not be looking at any postseason unless they try to do something with the CIT or CBI, and that'll be a week or so away before we even know anything about that.
Well, I know you got a requiem on Towson. Meanwhile, Coppin, Morgan, that is to be laid out. You'll hear the Coppin game here on Thursday night here at WNST as well as Juan Dixon's guys get going. And we'll get to the Terps in a minute because that's the big story around here, and they look good against Michigan. But you also spent some time down at UMBC on Saturday, and they suddenly are a little engine that might, right? Like going up to Vermont and winning a game, that's not too big for them. They've done it. Vermont's probably shaken a little bit, and this is where this gets good, right? This is where you go on the road, you pack it in, the place will be nuts up in Burlington. This is a fun game and a fun environment for the UMBC kids to play themselves into this situation when things didn't look so good for the men of Ryan Odom 2 months ago, did it?
No, it didn't, and the story had been injuries with them all season, and Ryan had said probably a couple of weeks ago that, this is who we have going forward, and this is, who we know we'll be working with, and it's, taken a while for those guys to kind of get accustomed to that rotation and the group that they're playing with, not necessarily the ones that they expected to have, and they've actually gelled pretty well over the last third of the season, and going into Vermont and winning is certainly something they're not foreign to them. They did it, of course, in the big championship game 2 years ago that put them in the tournament, and they went up there last year and won a regular season game there, and so they've done it, 2 times recently, and a lot of these guys, several of the guys on this team were on those 2 teams. So I'm sure UMBC was not the one that John Becker really wanted to see coming to town, this week for a semifinal, and then of course if they get past that, there'll be one more road game against either probably Stony Brook or Hartford, whoever wins that game. But they did good to get past the first round.
Robert Canady is our guy. He is, of course, buckets and birds. Also down at Compass Point. Tell everybody about the golf course, too, because, 70 degrees on Monday, 65 on Tuesday. My cat's in the window chasing bugs. You know what I mean? Like, it feels a little springy, and, azaleas are coming, and it's golf season all of a sudden, right? And it happens real quick when there's no winter.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of been sneaking up on us all winter without any significant snow at all this year. We've kind of been, had some pockets of days where we've been busy here and there, and people sneaking out when it's in the 50s, and with on Sunday I think it was in the mid 60s, and we ran through several hundred people. It looked like probably a Sunday afternoon in the summer out there as far as the number of crowds. With the time change, it stayed lighter until about 7 o'clock. So, all the later to play, and the nice weather this week early is allowing people to get out, and so it's. Then we've got the Irish Open coming up, and I'll mention it, but it's just about sold out. If people haven't gotten in, they might even be late as of right now. By the time they hear this, so that'll be this Saturday, and it'll be our first big event of the year, and we're looking forward to having pretty much a full field for that with the beer and the food flowing and everything. So definitely golf season.
Can't imagine that. Here. Beer and golf, that doesn't go together, does it?
Yeah, exactly.
Robert Canady joining us here. He is Buckets and Birds, and this is a chance for you to take a bow for your golf course. I saw you won another massive award, Billy Casper Golf. I just want to tip the cap over Compass Point and say that there are pictures of you on the internet doing things other than hitting that hole-in-one last year.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's actually a picture of me in a suit and tie, which you'll probably see once a year.
I've never said that's it, man. I've seen you in a few parkas. I've seen you in a lot of golf gear and zip-ups. How many sport coats do you own, Rob?
I actually own several because before this, I used to wear them regularly, and things still pop up. Now and then you got to go to weddings and things like that. But yeah, it was a good chance to get together with everyone in the company, and as our motto goes with our company, we work hard, we play hard. So we spent some time at the one of the Disney parks. We actually did visit our charity, the Fisher House, which is a fantastic organization that provides housing for veterans and their families when the veterans are being treated at the local hospital and everything, and provides it at no charge for them a place to stay. So we had done some fundraising and took down a check to present to them, and then we had our award ceremony. And yes, I was fortunate enough to take home Salesperson of the Year. So twice out of 4 years. So that's something I'm proud of and happy about.
As you should be. And it's all this basketball you're watching, all this mixing and mingling and networking here at WNST and out on the Twitter thing. You can follow Robert Canady at Buckets and Birds. You can certainly find him down at Pasadena at Compass Point Golf if you got an event, you want to have an outing, you just want to go hit the golf ball. They got 36 beautiful holes down there in Pasadena, Anne Arundel County, the end of Mountain Road. We'll see you down there as well for the Irish Open this week. And on to the hardwoods where, all right, so let's get to Maryland and where we are with all of this, because the draw comes next week. They are the great hope. Clearly good to see the bench come to life and the end of the bench. I don't know if there's much of a bench for Turgeon at this point. He said the gorilla's off his back in regard to the Big Ten. Look, there's no gorilla. You got to go play next week, and you're going to have to beat a 14 seed or whatever, right? And then there's what's going to happen in Indianapolis this week, where maybe they get Penn State on a Friday night. Maybe they get through that. Then they'd see Michigan State probably. I don't know how much basketball I want them to play this weekend, Rob.
There's been that thought before, as far as you've gone through the toughest season in the country and done so very well, and you've played it with a short bench the entire season. So, you've got to think about the minutes these guys are playing. 3 games in a row, and then to turn around, probably 4 days, 5 at the most, that you'll be playing again. Hopefully at least 2 more games that weekend. So, no one will come out and say it. No one, at least on Maryland staff, will come out and say that it wouldn't be the worst thing if they win 1 game and then they're done. But knowing Turgeon, a lot of coaches say they don't hear the noise out there, but obviously he does, because he mentioned it. And
well, you're always trying to win, right? I mean, these are competitive kids. I don't know if it's in their best interest. It's like a racehorse running too fast, right? Like it's there's always that. And Friday, you get out there, you get amped up. It's the end of the day. You waited all day to play. If you go out there and you're sharp enough to win, then you start smelling like you want to win the tournament. Then you start smelling like, well, we're here. Let's go beat Michigan State, and then you get out there into the flow of the game. I don't think you want to go out there and lose by 20 points to anyone. But again, I don't know that it's in the greatest interest of the team to do that. And winning would probably put them on a track to stay closer to home. And I know the way they pod, everyone seems to think they're going to Greensboro, but you might wake up in St. Louis. You might wake up in Cleveland if you don't find yourself where you want to be on Friday night and lose by 22 to Penn State, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the one thing they have to consider, is that seeding. For the longest time, they were looking like a solid 3 and a possible 2, and now they're probably sitting somewhere between the 3 and the 4 from what I've heard, and depending upon how this week goes. But no player, no coach is going to say we're going to go in and it's okay if we lose, or we're not going to give it all, or we're going to rest our guys. They're going to get the juices flowing, and they'll want to, win those 3 games and, hang another banner, have another trophy, and, take their chances then. Turgeon would say, hey, we'll have 3 days to rest up and get ready. But, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world from an outside perspective if they ended up with a couple extra days rest, a couple extra days of practice. But I think it'll be an exciting tournament, there in Indianapolis. So many good teams at the top of that conference, and like I said, the potential matchup with Michigan State again in their second round, the semifinals, that would be great. And so it's something to look forward to. The early cap off good regular seasons that they've had.
Here's Robert Canady, Buckets and Birds, the way to find him, and Compass Point Golf, hitting the golf ball from Orlando all the way to Pasadena, Maryland, and basketball all the way through. Coppin, Morgan, we saw Loyola go out early, Navy as well. There are still some hopes alive here for other small schools and small conferences locally. And I know you love this, and I had John Feinstein on last week talking about his book and The Road to March and small schools and UMBC being part of that, and Loyola of Chicago being part of that a few years ago. And there's always a George Mason or a Butler out there. But this is the time of the year for all that, and especially for some places like Dayton, and I know you have an affinity for that, and San Diego State and some other schools that aren't Kentucky or Duke or North Carolina in a year where North Carolina's down, and a lot of other programs are down as well. Maryland's in an up year, and this is a year where this time next week, we're going to be all in on whatever Valparaiso they're playing, right? And being like, how do you navigate this and get to the second weekend and maybe see a Duke at Madison Square Garden next weekend or something like that, right?
Yeah, you definitely mentioned hit on it with all those teams that are outside the national picture, the Daytons and San Diego States and everything like that. I mean, this is the year that it wouldn't be surprising to see one of them make some noise and to advance into that Elite Eight or even Final Four. And probably truthfully outside this area, Maryland might be like that to some of the rest of the country. We're focused on them every week as we see them, and live and die with every game that they have. But for the people out west, if they were to see Maryland, get into that second weekend in the Elite Eight and everything, they might say where did they come from and everything. So it's definitely going to be a wide open tournament. Of course, Kansas going into it, is playing as well as anyone else. But beyond that, you've got your Duke, who you can never count them out when it comes tournament time, and Gonzaga. We'll see if they're again a regular season. Train that this doesn't keep it moving through the postseason as happened in the past. And so
let's see how many of these Big Ten teams survive into the 16, right? Like, there'll be 10 teams going into these brackets. 6 or 7 of them will be on the plus side of looking like a 4 seed, a 3 seed, a 5 seed, somewhere in there, to say they got a real puncher's chance to put 6 of the teams into the final 16 or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do. I mean, it's, you've seen that in the past with other conferences, the ACC, where, in the Big East in their glory days, the old Big East glory days, they'd get 3 teams if you're in the Final Four. They'd get, 4 or 5 in the final 8 and the 16. So, they definitely, if things fall the right way and depending upon seedings, that second round can always be a tough one depending upon where you're seated. If you go in as a 3 or 4 seed, a lot of times is a very tough second round game, and that's an easy one to stumble up against. So I think next Sunday, Selection Sunday, may be a little bit more interesting than it's been in the past. Like you said, to see where not only the seeding falls, but what regions they go to, whether they are close to home down in Greensboro or do get sent to one of the other regions.
Always appreciate our visits with Robert Canady at Compass Point Golf, and he is Buckets and Birds. He will be bucketing and birding on Tuesday night as UMBC goes up to Vermont. We got Coppin playing on Thursday right here at WNST. You'll want to check that out as well. And I even have my my Maryland magma lamp here with the gold magma flowing through it. You can get that at Sporticulture. Find them out on the internet. I'm going to grab Court and bring him on next week as we all get Maryland up here. I do not have red lights to put around myself, so I'm just going with the magma lamp. Rob, we'll see you down there, man. Hit him straight. I know you want to go play some golf here as the weather gets good. Please go do that, and we'll see you on the hardwoods before the week's over, okay?
Sounds good.
You got it. Robert Canady joining us here in the hopes that more of the local teams and the UMBCs and the Coppins and the Morgans can push us through this week where the Loyolas and the Navies and the Towsons did not and have not. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live. Anywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports and local hoops.